Yarrow. Cherokee healers packed it directly into open wounds on the trail, not as a last resort, as the first move. Ethnobotanical field records from the late 1800s document it as the single most carried plant medicine in Cherokee territory. One plant, documented, studied, recorded by outside researchers who watched it work. And here is the part that should stop you cold. It is probably growing in your backyard right now. Most people walk past it every single day, so why does it feel like a secret? That question is exactly where this story begins. Because yarrow is just the start. There are 10 plants, 10 documented, daily use, practical knowledge plants that Cherokee communities relied on. Not occasionally, not ceremonially, not as folklore, but as functional household tools built into the rhythm of ordinary life. And when you see all 10 listed together, something strange happens. You recognize most of them. You have seen them on store shelves. You might have a few in your kitchen right now, but you probably had no idea what they actually were, where that knowledge originally came from, or why it feels like you are hearing it for the first time. Stay with me, because that feeling, that gap between what existed and what you were told, is exactly what this story is about. A few years ago, a researcher scanning through digitized ethnobotanical field notebooks from the 1880s and 1890s came across something that stopped the work cold. These were not polished academic reports. They were field notebooks, worn, handwritten, filled with the kind of detail you only get when someone is sitting inside a community watching how things actually work. Plant names, preparation methods, specific uses, context about when and why. And the list was not small. Thousands of documented Cherokee plant uses, later compiled into what became Daniel Moorman's Native American Ethnobotany Database, one of the most comprehensive records of indigenous plant knowledge ever assembled. Page 1 of one of those early notebooks, rosehip, not listed as rare, not listed as sacred, listed as daily, used for energy, used during winter illness seasons, used in ways that made complete sense once you understand that rosehip carries one of the highest natural concentrations of vitamin C found in any plant on the continent. Cherokee communities did not have that terminology. They did not need it. They had generations of observed results, and those results were consistent enough to be recorded by outside researchers who came in skeptical and left with full notebooks. That detail matters. Hold on to it. Now here is the first cluster, the plants that open this picture wide. Yarrow first, because it earns the lead. The astringent compounds in yarrow have been confirmed in modern plant chemistry studies. The topical use, the direct application to skin and tissue, is not speculation. It is documented in USDA plant records, in early American herbal publications, and in field notes that predate the Civil War. This was functional plant knowledge, not guesswork. Rosehip, vitamin C density, immune support, documented winter staple. Available dried at any bulk herb store. Practically free if you know what to look for. Red clover. Blood supportive compounds. Long-term community use recorded across multiple Cherokee plant records. Still sold in health food stores today, usually with no mention of where that knowledge originated. Sumac. This one surprises people. It has antimicrobial properties, and Cherokee communities used it in ways that blurred the line between food and medicine. Exactly the kind of practical, integrated knowledge that gets dismissed when someone calls it just cooking. Blackberry. The root and the leaf, not just the fruit. Documented in bark preparations for digestive support. Widely recorded across multiple independent ethnobotanical sources. Grows in most of North America. Has grown there for centuries. 5 plants, all documented, all still relevant, all available to you right now without a prescription, without a pharmacy, without a markup. So here's the question that started pulling at researchers who went deep into this record. If this knowledge was so well documented, if outside observers were writing it down in notebooks as early as the 1830s, when exactly did it stop feeling like household knowledge and start feeling like a fringe idea? Because it did not disappear on its own, John Gunn published Gunn's Domestic Medicine in 1830. It was one of the most widely read household health books in early America. And Gunn did not hide where frontier medicine came from. He acknowledged directly that indigenous plant knowledge including Cherokee plant practice, was the foundation that settlers had borrowed, adapted, and built on. That was not controversial in 1830. It was just accurate. The American Medical Association formed in 1847. Pharmaceutical consolidation accelerated after the Civil War, and slowly, steadily, a word started appearing in medical literature to describe knowledge that communities had practiced for generations. Anecdotal, not disproven, not dangerous, just anecdotal, meaning it does not count. That shift did not happen by accident, and in 1906, a man named Harvey Wiley pushed through a piece of legislation called the Pure Food and Drug Act that would reshape permanently which knowledge was allowed to be called useful. What happened next didn't just regulate dangerous products, it reshaped which knowledge was allowed to matter at all. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 sounds like consumer protection, and parts of it were. But here is the second-order effect that nobody puts in the headline, the one that quietly changed everything for plant knowledge specifically. To make a health claim about a plant, you now needed proof, clinical proof, the kind of proof that required pharmaceutical-scale testing, institutional funding, and a pathway that only existed if someone stood to profit from the outcome. Plants cannot be patented. A yarrow leaf growing in your backyard belongs to nobody, which means nobody was going to spend the money to run the trials, which means the proof never came, which means the claims became illegal to make, which means the knowledge became, in the eyes of the regulatory system, officially useless. This is where it changes. It was not that the plants stopped working. It was that the system designed to validate them had no mechanism and no incentive to do so. Effective household plant knowledge did not disappear because it failed. It became legally unspeakable in any commercial context that mattered. And Cherokee communities faced something even more direct at the same moment. Beginning in the 1870s and accelerating through the 1930s, federal boarding school policies pulled indigenous children out of their communities and into institutions specifically designed to interrupt cultural transmission. The explicit goal, documented in government policy language of the era, was assimilation, and that meant language, practice, and knowledge. Generational plant literacy, the kind that lives in a grandmother's kitchen, in a family's remedy notes, in the daily habit of knowing which plant does what, was one of the things those policies broke. Not by accident, by design. Ethnobotanist Paul Hamill spent years working to document surviving Cherokee plant knowledge, precisely because so much of the transmission chain had been severed. His work, alongside the Mormon database, represents what researchers were able to recover. But recovery is not the same as continuity. The unbroken daily practice, the kind that keeps knowledge alive at the household level, that was interrupted, deliberately, institutionally, and simultaneously. Two forces, same moment, same result. Now look at what happened to the second cluster of plants, the 5 that carry that weight most clearly. Valerian, Cherokee, and Appalachian communities both documented it for sleep and nervous system calm. The sedative compounds in valerian root have since been studied in university settings. It works. And you can buy it right now in a pharmacy, in a capsule, with a markup, with no mention of the communities that carried that knowledge for generations before it appeared on a retail shelf. Hops. Most people think of beer. That is exactly the point. The calming, sedative properties of hops were documented across multiple indigenous groups in North America. The plant knowledge existed long before the brewing industry made hops synonymous with something else entirely. The original use did not disappear. It just got buried under a different identity. Lavender. Sold today almost exclusively as aromatherapy, candles, bath products, wellness branding. But the documented traditional use was practical and direct. Antimicrobial properties, calming compounds, not decoration, not luxury, a working plant with a working history that got repackaged into a consumer aesthetic and sold back at a premium. Rosemary, sitting in most kitchen spice racks right now. Circulatory support compounds documented in early plant literature. Cherokee and early American herbal records both reference it in ways that go far beyond seasoning. It crossed the line between food and medicine so naturally that most people never noticed the line existed. Aloe. one of the most documented plants in the history of global traditional medicine. Topical healing compounds confirmed across independent traditions on multiple continents. And today it is sold in plastic bottles at a markup, when a single aloe plant in a windowsill pot does the same work and costs almost nothing. Here is the pattern. What it was: practical, daily, household-level plant knowledge. What it became: a branded product, a supplement capsule, an aromatherapy label, a pharmacy shelf item with an inflated price tag. What it still actually is: the same plant, the same compounds, the same results, just moved behind a transaction. Now go back to that field notebook from the 1880s, the last pages. This is the payoff. At the back of one of those early ethnobotanical notebooks, researchers found something that was not a list of individual plants. It was a preparation note, simple, household scale, requiring nothing unusual, combining 3 of these 10 plants together for a single purpose. No complex ritual, no specialized equipment, just practical knowledge about how certain plant compounds work better in combination than alone. The same pattern, multiple plants used together for complementary effect, appears independently in ethnobotanical records from Cherokee territory, from Appalachian communities, and from indigenous traditions in the Pacific Northwest. 3 separate traditions, no contact with each other. Same conclusion. That is not coincidence. That is observation. Repeated, confirmed, recorded. And here is what that means for you right now. Rosehip, dried, available at any bulk herb store, inexpensive, ready to use as tea. Yarrow, almost certainly growing within walking distance of where you are sitting. Aloe, 1 plant, 1 windowsill, no ongoing cost. Lavender, a small pot in a kitchen garden, most climates, most of the year. Valerian, widely available, inexpensive, and carrying centuries of documented use behind it. This is not about abandoning modern medicine. That framing is a distraction. This is about reclaiming practical plant literacy that was always supposed to be ordinary household knowledge, the kind of knowledge that lived in kitchens and family remedy notes and community practice before 2 institutional forces conspired in the same decade to make it marginal. The knowledge was never lost. It was documented, recorded, survived in archives and databases and worn field notebooks. It was just moved, systematically, profitably, behind a price tag. Cherokee communities held this not as mysticism, not as ceremony, as daily practical intelligence about the world they lived in. The kind of intelligence that keeps a family well without requiring a transaction. The people who still know this are not conspiracy theorists. They are just the ones who never stopped paying attention. Which of these 10 plants is already in your home right now? Drop it in the comments, because the answers are going to surprise you. And next time, 1 single bark that early American doctors were actively prescribing before it vanished from every official record in 1938. The condition it treated will stop you cold. That one is coming.